I arrived in, what month was that? It was probably August of 2009. And so that's actually winter there. So it was actually kind of cold when I got there. And I remember my first experience, we went to the mission home um, and we just got settled in a little bit. But then all the trainers came in. It was a big intake. There's probably like, I don't know, maybe 20 elders that came in, so it was pretty big. And yeah, all the missionaries started talking with each other, and we were trying to find out, who's going to be your trainer, and we're trying to guess. There's only like two missionaries that actually spoke Spanish, and I was called Spanish speaking, so I'm like, well, it's probably going to be one of them. So I was pretty confident, and I remember one of them was from Spain, and then another was actually, he was an Aussie, but he spoke Spanish as well because his parents were Spanish. And so secretly I'm like, oh, I really want the Spanish guy so I can like learn the language. And luckily I did. So so Elder Guevara was his name. So he was my first companion. He was trying to learn English, so he would only speak in English to me, which was kind of a challenge because I was trying to learn Spanish. But he's like, no, you can't speak English to me. You only speak Spanish and I'll speak English to you. So that was kind of a challenge. But my first area was right in downtown Sydney. So it was an interesting experience. I mean, my first thoughts when I got my mission call was, it's Australia, it's going to be full of Australians. But when I arrived in the city in downtown, I realized, like, where are all the Australians? Everyone was Asian, basically. So Sydney's just a huge melting pot. A lot of Asians, the Chinese, Japanese, Thai, Vietnamese, everything you can imagine. And so I remember that was a big shock for me. I was really excited though to be in Sydney because that's where the Opera House is. So I'm like, oh, I get to go visit the Opera House. So that was pretty cool. But my first week in the mission was probably one of the most stressful. I remember just my first day there, I had super bad like jet lag because the flight's like 16 hours. The time difference is really weird. So I was really tired, and my companion was just like, go, go, go. Probably the hardest working missionary that I ever had. And he's just like, okay, go talk to people. And I'm like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. And so he's like, okay, well, we have English class that we teach, and so just hand out these English class flyers. And I remember like the first day or two, even handing out just English class flyers, I was just terrified. I was terrified of talking to people, and I was like, oh no, like, what am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing. I can't even talk to people. I was so nervous. And so I remember, especially that first week, just praying a lot, praying my heart out, and miraculously, I got through it, and I started handing out flyers. That was my start, and then all of a sudden I was talking to people, and it was no problem. So I remember that first week, really hard, but when I got down on my knees, then that's when things started to get easier. There are some fun, like, Aussie holidays that are good. So there's Australia Day, which is in January. I can't ever remember which day. I think it's like the 27th, so they just had it. So that's really fun. It's summer there, so going to the beach is pretty typical. You go to the beach for Australia Day and have a barbecue, which is nice. They also have Anzac Day, which is kind of like I can't remember if it was like World War II or something. It's a war memorial kind of day. And they have, one of their traditions is they have Anzac biscuits or cookies. They call cookies biscuits. And they're really, really hard, but they taste pretty good. So you have to watch out when you're biting them because you might injure yourself. But that's pretty fun. For Anzac Day, it's fun to go to the Anzac Memorial, which is right in Sydney, right by the church, actually, where the church is. So you can see it from actually where the church is. So it's pretty cool. Let's see, other interesting things about Australia. Yeah, just the biggest thing is that it's a huge melting pot, and there's just people from everywhere. So it's just a really good place to see, it's like a snapshot of the entire world. So it's pretty cool. You get to see a lot of different cultures, and you get to see, like, different traditions. So you meet people from Africa one day, and then people from Europe and South America. So just all over the place. But everyone's really open as far as the kind of the culture of the entire country. Everyone's really laid back, pretty chill, and very accepting of everyone. So that was really a cool thing. So it's really a neat place to go. The food's really good. Before my mission, I was actually really picky, but then after serving, like, I love all kinds of food now. So Sydney has a lot of Asians, so they have a lot of Asian food. So that was some of my favorites. One of my favorite places to go was a Thai restaurant. I think it's called Three Mamas, and just love the Thai food. Just your typical, Thai food: red curry, green curry, massaman curry. So that's really good. There's some Vietnamese places too that are pretty good. Although I had some meals that were Vietnamese that were different. One thing I would say to avoid is durian fruit. You'll know it when you see it. It's a giant, like, brown, spiky ball. It's really hard. So if you're ever curious, don't get it or eat it. It's a bad idea. Let's see, what else is good? Mangoes are really good there. They're really fresh. Oh yeah, with the Vietnamese food, I had this thing called bitter melon. Disgusting. I don't know why do you eat that? I don't know. But yeah, they did anyway. So don't do that if you can avoid it. I had some Spanish food too. So pupusas are really good. So even if you're not Spanish speaking, there are some Spanish restaurants. And if they're Salvadoreños, so from El Salvador, get those. That's pupusas right there. They're so good. Let's see. Anything else that's really good for food? Watch out for the bean ice cream. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. It's not. But Korean ice cream, that's good. So you should check out Korean ice cream. That's really yummy, and it's really cheap too. So they're just like in little shops around Sydney. Just gotta look out for those. So weather actually is not too bad. It's pretty temperate climate, so it can be dry or kind of humid depending on where you are. So if you're in the city, that's right by the water there. So it's pretty humid. For me, I spent my summers in the suburbs. So there was not water, and it was very hot. So it got up to about 40 degrees Celsius. So it's probably like 110 or something. So tracting in that, not so fun. But it wasn't like terribly humid, so it was okay. Although some of the people, when we knocked on doors, they thought we were crazy, and they're like, why are you out here? And they'd get like mad at us because we were out in the hot sun. As far as getting cold, it does get kind of cold. You'll need like a jacket, but that's about it. I think it got down to freezing like once. So there's frost on our windows once. That was about it though. So pretty nice temperature. No real extremes or anything. And I don't remember any severe storms or anything like that. So pretty safe and nice weather. So there's a lot of really cool animals in Australia. So in Sydney, it kind of depends on where you are. So if you're in the city, you're not going to see too many animals. But there are some. So I have a few really, like, it's kind of cool memories. So a few of the famous animals in the city, they have the Royal Botanical Gardens there. And so there are really big bats that live there. So they're called the flying fox, I think is what they're called. So they're pretty big. They're fruit bats. They just kind of roost in the trees there. So they're pretty cool. They come out in like really big swarms or whatever you call that group of bats. And so that's pretty cool. The birds are pretty exotic looking. So there is the cockatoo. And the cockatoo is if you're not familiar with it, it's just a white bird and has like the little yellow head thing, but it makes a really annoying sound, and it like serves as an alarm clock sometimes, which was not nice. But so those are pretty cool. And then there are lorikeets, which are like rainbow kind of colored birds, and they're just like flying around. So one really cool thing about the birds in the city is they're kind of domicile. So we actually had, in my apartment, we would feed the birds, the cockatoos, and slowly we like got them more comfortable with us. So first they would just like, we'd put bread out on the window, and then they'd come and eat the bread. But then soon we started like making them work for it a little bit. So like we made them come in a little bit, and then after a while, then we like basically trained them, and they'd come on our arms, they'd go on our back, on our head. So that was pretty fun. Although we realized that there was a problem eventually, because we went a couple days without feeding them, and every morning the birds would come to our window and start tapping on the window because they wanted to get fed. So that was pretty fun. And then besides that, of course, there are kangaroos. That's not so much in the city or the suburbs. You'd have to go out in the bush, as they say. So they run wild there. Or what we usually did was we went to like, there's a ton of like nature reserves or whatever. And so you can go to those and, pet the kangaroos and feed them and stuff. So that's pretty cool. There's lots of other animals. An echidna, they have those, or the wombats. Wombats are pretty cool. They're kind of like a cross between a gerbil and a dog. So they're pretty fun looking. And then there's koalas as well. The one thing I would say to watch out for animals is the spiders. There are a lot, and they are very big. There's the huntsman, which is probably about this size. So beware of that one. But it's a good spider. It eats the other spiders, so that's good. The one to watch out for is the redback, which is a cousin to the black widow. So watch out for that one. It likes to live in garden sheds and stuff. Also watch out for the Sydney funnel web. That one's really poisonous and can kill you. So it's one of the most poisonous spiders. So watch out for that. I think that's it. While gardening, wear gloves. Don't ever leave your shoes outside, because something will crawl in it, and then you'll have to deal with that. Try not to kill the spiders inside your apartment, because they're big and they'll just make a really big mess. That's really the only reason. And yeah, watch out for snakes too, because those are deadly too. So pretty much everything in Sydney can kill you. So just watch out. Yeah. So in Sydney, there's a few sites you need to see. So obviously the Opera House is one of them. You also need to see the Royal Botanical Gardens. And there's you can see the observatory, although everyone else thought it was boring. I thought it was cool. But so that's cool. The Harbor Bridge is really cool. And one thing that's really famous to do is to go on the bridge and you go halfway. Because when I was on my mission, it was north and south. And so I was called South Side, so I could only walk to the halfway mark. And so you always take a picture by the halfway mark. But while I was on my mission, they actually merged, so then we were able to go back and forth. But I know they're split again, so don't cross that line. But so that's really fun. You got to do that. And another thing you need to go see is the AMP Tower. So it's just a really tall tower inside of a mall. And it's probably too expensive to go to the restaurant, but it's pretty cool. And also there is the aquarium. That's pretty cool there. And then also it's right next to it's the wildlife reserve thing. So that's where I saw my first kangaroo. So that was cool. And then other than that, there's Darling Harbor, which is pretty cool. It's just there's like this really cool fountain. Also, there's a laser tag place right in Darling Harbor, which is really fun to do. It's a zone activity. That's fun. And also, there's the Maritime Museum, which is free. So we like that one too. Other than that, Chinatown, they have a really good little, I think they're called Emperor Puffs or something like that. It's just like a little window in a Chinese shop. That's really cheap, but they're really, really yummy. So that's another place to visit. And other than that, the further north you go, it's more touristy. Not very good for contacting, but it's fun just to go visit. And always remember that you can take the free shuttle, or it's a bus, so it's green. So look for that. That's nice to take and go see sights. So yeah. So in Australia, there's a lot of words that are different, and you just kind of pick them up as you go. So I probably won't be able to remember all of them. But some Aussie sayings are fair dinkum. I don't really know what it means, but they use it all over the place. Like, that's real fair dinkum. I don't really know. I don't know what that means. Dinky die. I don't really know what that is either. Let's see. So some of the words that are different. One of them is the boot and the bonnet. So that's for your car. So your trunk is called the boot. So you don't ever call it the hood or the trunk or anything. And then the hood is called the bonnet, I guess. And let's see, other Aussie words. Oh, a countertop is called the bench. So that one's kind of weird. Elevators are a lift. Trash is the bin. And I'm trying to think of any others. Oh, okay. If you want the trick to speaking with an Aussie accent, all you have to do is add an R to the end of anything that sounds or ends in an O. So instead of no, he's like no, just like that. Okay. So you can listen for it. You'll hear the hidden R in there. But it's interesting because every other word that has an R actually written in it, then they don't pronounce that. So I don't know what's going on there. Let's see. I don't know if I know it. Do you remember any other ones that I know? Yeah, I can't think of any other Australian isms. Okay, I have some. Kiwis. Okay, Kiwis are fun. So they're from New Zealand, and they have their own little accent. And one thing, serving in Sydney, you get to pick out all the different accents. So you can tell where someone is from by how they speak English. Even if their English is not their native tongue, you can tell where they're from by how they speak English. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, Kiwis, it's like Australian, but more I don't know, it's lower, less nasally, and you'd be like, bro. You just say bro a lot. It's like, bro, I need some water, bro. So that's Kiwi. That was my favorite accent. So Australians always make fun of the Kiwis for that accent, but I love it. It's great. So yeah, there's some accent tips. When you see someone on the street, you just say, "Hi, go, mate." It's "How are you going, mate?" But you say, "Hi, go, mate." Kind of like one little sound there. So that's kind of fun. "Hi, go, mate." And yeah, just kind of get it up in the nose. Say, "Fair income." Oh yeah, "Shall we right?" "No worries." Those are some of the basic Aussie things. Any other tips? Don't be that elder that tries to have an Australian accent, because it's really annoying. Okay, I know it's really cool that you're serving in Australia, but don't be that elder that tries to speak in an Aussie accent his whole mission. We had some elders do that. No, don't do that. So English class was amazing. It was probably the most effective finding tool that we had in the mission. And so that's only in the city itself. So in Sydney, we have what's called a teaching center. So instead of going to other people and teaching at their house, you tell them to come to you, and their classroom's set up, and you can teach them there. So every week we'd have 2 English classes, and a lot of your proselyting work is just handing out those English class flyers, because it's so effective. And so what you'll do is everyone will come in, and you have a little intro, and then you have your different divisions of English class. So you have beginners, intermediate, and then you have the conversation class. I started that one, so that's my favorite. But that one's actually really fun because you just play games with the students. But it's a great experience because you're helping them learn English, but then at the same time you're building a relationship with them. So it's really low key. You have fun with them. You laugh together, and then when you invite them to learn about the gospel, then they're much more accepting. They're like, yeah, these guys are cool. I'd be happy to learn some more about what you guys do. So really effective finding tool, really awesome. Going on your mission, like I always thought you have to be like serious 100% of the time. I don't know why I thought that, but I had a lot of fun. There are a lot of fun experiences I had. So I'll just tell you a few of them. Funny enough, a lot of the experiences all happened like right in the same time. So that was interesting. We had a fun flat. That's another thing. A flat is an apartment, so called a flat. But one time, there's this member who would bring us bread, and not just like a loaf or two. He'd bring us like a dozen loaves of bread. I'm like, what are we gonna do with all this bread? So we stuffed our freezer as full as we could, but there was still like a ton of bread left over, and so we're like, oh man, what are we gonna do? So I decided to just pick up one of the loaves and I just chucked it at one of the other elders. And so then he proceeded to take that loaf and he smacked it against me, and it wasn't too long before it was an all-out bread fight. And so we broke open the loaves. We started throwing the bread pieces like frisbees, balled them up, chucked them at each other. So that was really fun, our bread fight. Same flat, one of the elders decided to get some Nerf guns. I don't know if that was a good idea, but it was really fun anyway. So I remember we'd like go to the chapel on P-Day, of course, and we'd like set up the tables and stuff, and we'd have like an epic Nerf battle. And I remember one time I was with my companion, and I think it was actually at night that we did it. After planning and everything, we decided we were going to have a Nerf gun in the apartment, and so we did it in the dark, and the rule was headshots only. So yeah, that's not a good idea. So we were shooting, and I got really close to one of the other missionaries and shot him right in the eye. So then I'm like, oh, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I just can't see out of it. So that's it, but I'm okay. So thankfully it was no permanent damage, but his eye was all like swollen and stuff. So if you're going to have Nerf gun battles, don't do it in the dark and headshots only. So that'd be my advice from that. Another fun experience, the same flat, yeah. We went to a park and they had like a little mini zip line. So we thought it was a good idea to have all four of us jump on the zip line at the same time. Yeah, that was painful. So no really bad injuries, but our hands were pretty, scratched up a little bit from that. But it was good fun. So you can still have fun and be a good missionary at the same time. One story from my mission, this is while I was serving in the city. There was a Vietnamese girl who she was just walking by the church, and I was still really new in the mission, in just a couple weeks. And so I remember, I'm not sure if it was me or my companion, but we handed her an English class flyer, and then we saw her come to English class. And for me, that was like, it was right at the beginning of the mission, so everything that happened was really, really cool. I'm like, whoa, she actually came. So that was really cool. So there's a few cool experiences with her. So after English class, we contacted her and asked her if she wanted to learn more about Jesus Christ and about the gospel. And she's like, yeah, that sounds great. And so we started teaching her, and within like the first or second lesson, I remember we had taught her, and the spirit was really strong. And then at the end of the lesson, just kind of in passing, she's just like, can you tell me what I have to do to become a Christian? And so we're like, yeah, we can help you with that. So that was super cool. So we taught her more. She was golden pretty much the whole way. And she was baptized. And so that was my first baptism in the mission, and it was a really cool experience. And so a couple weeks went by, and I got transferred out of the area, and I found out that this girl had disappeared, just vanished. And I remember just feeling so devastated. And it was really hard to think that, she's just gone off the face of the earth. And so I was really discouraged about it. And it just went on for a while. A couple months went by, and I didn't hear anything about anything that had happened to her. And then I remember one day I got a call from another missionary. I was talking at a district meeting or something, and they still hadn't heard anything. A couple more months went by. I think it was like a year before I had heard anything about her again. And finally, I heard that she had started coming back. And that was a really cool moment for me, because when you're on your mission, and you grow a lot, and you just develop these relationships. And so it felt like she was my daughter almost. I know it sounds kind of weird, but I just was so attached to her, and I wanted so much for her to be happy and successful, and to come back to the fold. And so we found out that there were some things that had gone on, and she had made some mistakes, and so she just didn't feel very good about coming back to church. And for me, I was just like, I don't care what you did, we just want you back. And it was just a really cool experience for me, because that helped me understand more. That's how Heavenly Father feels about us when we make mistakes. When we do it, then we feel like, really bad about yourself. You're like, oh, I'm not worthy. I don't want to go back. People will ridicule me. But that's not at all how the gospel works. It's all about taking those who have made mistakes and making people better. And so over time, she started coming back more and more, and I actually got assigned back to that area, and so I was able to meet with her. And once she came back, and she was solid. She had some really cool experiences, really hard experiences, but she really had to have the trial of her faith, and that's what ultimately led her back to the gospel. But then, since then, she's been really solid and been a great member. So that's one really cool experience from my mission. As far as advice and my feelings about my mission, my mission is one of the most sacred experiences that I've had in my life. It has completely changed who I am as a person. Going to Sydney was really the experience of a lifetime. If I could give some advice to you being called in this mission, I guess number one is don't give up. There are a lot of times when you might want to. It can get pretty hard, especially you're so young, you don't really know what you're doing. But it's supposed to be that way. And one thing that I really learned on my mission is how to rely on the Lord. You're human, and there's only so much that you can do. And that's when you need to turn it over to the Lord. And He's going to take care of you. I remember a few experiences I was completely lost. I had no idea what I was doing. I was speaking Spanish, I was a district leader, I was a trainer, all at the same time, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. But I remember just getting on my knees and just saying, Heavenly Father, I've given it everything. I don't know what else I can do. And you know what? He provided the rest. I know that what you're doing, it's the right thing. This is the Lord's work. It's not yours. It's not about you. It's about the people that you're going to be serving. And they will be close to you for your entire life. It will be an experience that you will look back on forever. And another piece of advice is try to write in a journal. Don't write the meaningless day-to-day, what was the weather like kind of stuff, but write down the impressions that you have, and write down what you've learned. That's the most valuable thing from a mission is is the lessons and the spiritual experiences that you have. You will never regret serving, and it will be a blessing and an asset to you for your entire life. If I could do it again, I would, 100 times. It's really hard, but it's totally worth it. And I know that this is the right path. This is the gospel. This is what Jesus Christ wants for his children, and it's your job to help others to see that. And you may not feel like you're prepared or adequate and that you can do that, but you can. You can do it. I mean, if I can do it, then you can do it. So I just in closing, I just want to bear my testimony to you that this is the most incredible work that you'll ever participate in, and I don't know if you'll ever find any other work that will give you as much satisfaction as teaching the Lord's children. And I know that the Book of Mormon is an inspired book, and that it was translated by the gift and power of God through Joseph Smith. And I know that by teaching and helping people learn about the gospel, you will bring them more happiness than any other way that's possible. There is no other way possible. This is it. This is what's going to give them the most happiness. And I know that we have a living prophet who guides us. And that's a big deal, that we have a modern prophet. This is a living church. It's not something that happened in 1,000 years ago, but it's happening now. And you're a part of it. And so I just want to leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
It's a long plane ride over, I think around about 15 hours. So you get a lot of time to think and to psych yourself out and to try and sleep. I don't think it happens all that often for so many people, because you're pretty nervous. At least I was flying out there. Got to the airport. Mission president gave me a big hug. It's nerve-wracking. You don't really know quite what to expect, but you get to just kind of go with the flow a little bit. For me, in a almost state of kind of shock. I kind of had a cool or an unique experience getting assigned to my trainer. So I counted the number of trainers and the number of missionaries there, and there was one more missionary than there were trainers. And so after everybody was assigned, I didn't have my trainer assigned to me. So me and one of the assistants drove out to the area, to my first area, and met my trainer out there. And so it was a little bit more nerve-wracking, dragging it along a little bit, but it was fun. When I picture Australia, I picture a lot of white people. But my first area was, 80% Polynesian between Samoan and Tongan. And so my trainer was Kiwi from New Zealand. And so I didn't really see a whole lot of white people. I saw mostly Polynesians. And so it was awesome. I gained a deep, great respect and love for that culture throughout my mission. Most of my mission was like that. I was surrounded by a lot of Polynesians. And so, but that was just a shift in my thinking when my mission president sent me out to that area. He told me about it, and he told me that it was probably one of the most Polynesian areas in the mission, and I didn't really understand that was going to mean a kind of different culture than a lot of the rest of the mission. But it was awesome, and it was a fun first week adjusting to that. The city, very, very multicultural. I know in America we like to say we're a melting pot, and we are, but in Sydney, you'll go out and you'll see nationalities from every continent and so many countries, and it's really unique to see that. It's awesome, and you hear tons of different languages being spoken. You can walk downtown Sydney and you can get whatever kind of, except for Mexican food, which I love. You can get like almost any other kind of food. You can get Korean food, Japanese food, Polynesian food, just you name it, and you can probably find a place in the city where you can get it. And so that was awesome, and it opened up my eyes and allowed me to work with a lot of cultures. University of Sydney is awesome. I spent in my second area where we spent kind of in Sydney. We would go there a few times a week to contact, and a lot of Asians were there and would come and study abroad there. And it was just a really fun place where there were a lot of different cultures and a lot of different ideas, and it was very much a place where ideas were fostered. In Sydney, you have, the Opera House, which is awesome, which was in my second area. So we, on P-days and stuff, we would get to go up and do all the touristy things. So that was really cool. You walk out and you have like Aboriginals playing the didgeridoo, which is kind of this like long stick that you blow into and makes the kind of wailing sound. It's really hard to describe. You kind of have to listen to it. But you have Hyde Park, which is kind of like Central Park in New York, where it's just a really pretty park, and people just go there and enjoy it. And right across from Hyde Park is actually where the church has their kind of main office in Sydney, and there's like a little chapel that the YSA ward meets in. And so that's kind of is a really pretty place for the church to kind of be based in Sydney. Right across the street from Hyde Park, there's a really cool cathedral that a lot of tourists go to see. That's we went in a few times, and it's beautiful, stained glass, and it's a really it was one of the first things that was built there. And so it kind of harkens back to a lot of the Catholic origins that Sydney, that Australia itself was based on. And yeah, it's just a really fun melting pot in a lot of cultures. The cost of living there is very high. I know in terms of mission funds, we would be in the top 3 or top 5 consistently of like how much funds the missionaries would get, because it's expensive to live there. If you go to McDonald's, you're probably going to spend $10 at least. If you want like a burger, fries, and a drink, it'll put you out $10. And so that's kind of, it's a little bit different than it is here in terms of that. So our mission, the senior couple would pay the bills and stuff. But one time the bill got sent to us, and this was when I was 25 minutes outside the city, and it was like $1,200 a week for rent for a little 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of some kind of rundown apartment complex. And so it's expensive, but people get paid a little bit more. If you work at McDonald's, you're getting paid $15 an hour. So people they obviously find a way to make it work. I'd say overall the standard of living is pretty comparable to what it is here in the U.S., with a few kind of differences here and there. Not everybody has the latest iPhone, but most people have smartphones. So it's just kind of a little bit of a difference. But overall, I'd say the standard of living. And in terms of very general cultures, it's pretty similar to the U.S. I'd say you get almost as much difference in culture going from the West Coast to like the East Coast as you would going from the U.S. to Australia. So it's pretty comparable in terms of overall culture and overall standard of living. I'd say it's pretty comparable to the U.S. Transportation, a lot of people have cars, but the public transport system, especially in Sydney, is built out a lot more than it is in most cities in the U.S. You can get most places you want to go on the train and then buses. And so in terms of costs for that, it was around, so from like one of my areas to the temple, which was probably a 40-minute train ride, it was about $10. So it's manageable. The cars people drive are a lot smaller than they are in the U.S. The roads are a lot smaller than they are in the U.S. You don't ever see anybody driving around an F-250, or if you do, it's going to be like a construction guy or somebody that has a real need for it. They drive on the other side of the road than we do in the U.S., so that provides an interesting learning curve for a lot of missionaries. That I luckily started off my area on a bike, or started off my mission on a bike for the first 6 months, so I kind of got my mind shifted before I had to jump into the driver's seat of a car. But it's interesting and fun and cool to learn about. There's a pretty big tourist industry. A lot of people go to Sydney just doing touristy things. So there's of course a ton of touristy things to do there. The big companies, you all see like Westfields around, which is like a mall. It's kind of like a brand of mall. I don't really know what to compare it to out here, but yeah, it's kind of a branded mall. So they employ a lot of people, and that's where a lot of people go and do their shopping at Westfields. And then Vodafone is kind of like the Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, Sprint, kind of all combined out there. And I know that they cover a lot of like European countries as well. And so those are kind of the two big kind of all billboards you see all over the place are usually for like Westfields or Vodafone. They're very strict on the speed limit there. If you go a kilometer or two over, then you'll get a ticket. And so people actually drive like under the speed limit there. Like the speed limit there is the speed limit. You don't go over it. And versus Utah, you're going like 80 in a 75 mile an hour zone and cars are whizzing past you. There you don't want to go over the speed limit, otherwise you'll get a ticket. And so that's kind of interesting. And the speed limits are slower there, and so you kind of feel like you're chugging along when you think back to Utah or the U.S. in general. You just want to be considerate and drive. They lay on the horn a lot more than people do, I feel like, out here in Utah. And you don't want to get freaked out just because somebody honks at you, because they're probably not even that upset at you. You might just be, if you go like outside the lines at all, then you'll probably get, they call it beeped. They don't call it honk. They call it, they'll beep at you. So they don't see it as being as offensive, I feel like, as we do here. And so just little cultural differences in driving and transportation. And a lot, like I said earlier, a lot more people take public transport or take the buses. And that's kind of more of a built into the culture than it is here. The Sydney mission, well, now is the North and South Sydney mission. And about a year before I got there, it was the North and South Sydney mission. And so then it merged back into the Sydney mission for 90% of my time there. I think in the last transfer, the last few weeks of my mission, it split again between the North and South Sydney mission. And so that, it creates some issues with missionaries. I know at the beginning of my mission, it was a big deal whether you had, whether you had come from the North mission or the South mission, just difference in policies and those kind of things. So that was kind of unique. I didn't really mind because I was just a Sydney, an Australia Sydney missionary, but it was a big deal for some people. When I was there, I believe there were 13 stakes, along with some districts that were more in kind of the outback or away from Sydney. And each stake generally had a zone, and I know it's not like that in every mission by any means, but it just kind of made sense in our mission to do it like that. In our mission, again, it was fairly uncommon for there to be, well, it's changed now from what I understand, but when I was there, it was fairly uncommon for there to be more than one missionary companionship in each ward. And it was also fairly uncommon to cover more than one ward. It was generally each ward and most branches had just one set of missionaries assigned to it. And so, it, in a sense, that made things nice. You didn't have to worry about covering multiple wards or sharing a ward with a companionship or anything like that. So that was, I think, in some sense, kind of a blessing. In general, the religious culture in Australia has become more so moved to the side of apathy, I would say. A lot of people aren't too concerned about religion. It's interesting, a lot of the younger crowd are moving back towards religion in a sense, but more to like the kind of evangelical feel to religion, where it's a lot more kind of music and fun than anything else. But I mean, it's a good thing, because I think most of their parents' generation, just, they might say that they're Catholic, but they haven't been to church in 20 years. And so it's it's kind of an interesting field to work with some people that are just very apathetic about religion, don't have much interest, and versus you have the people that have come to Australia from China or from Japan or from a lot of Asian countries or Polynesian countries that have different views on religion. So you have a lot of Polynesians that are very passionate about religion. They care a lot about it, whether they're Methodist or LDS or whatever the case may be. They're usually very passionate about their religion. A lot of Asians, there's a lot of students that come over from China and Korea and attend university in Australia. And so a lot of them are actually fairly curious about it. They didn't grow up with religion in their home for the most part. And so they see it as kind of a learning experience along with coming to university and experiencing the Australian culture. They actually really enjoy getting to know about religion. And so that was a really fun experience, being able to teach and work with quite a few Asians, was to be able to be there from the very first time they learned about prayer or learned about Heavenly Father in any way, and to work with them all throughout the process of them going to develop a relationship with their Heavenly Father and Savior. It was just a really great experience to be able to experience kind of all sides of the spectrum when it came to views on religion. Sydney, at least when I was there, it would vie for the top spot on the most languages spoken within the mission. And so I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was up there in the 20s. And it was the most, like I said, it would be up in the first or second spot with the most languages spoken in the mission. All the Polynesian languages, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, just basically almost any language you could think of, people were called and assigned to in Australia. So that was a really cool experience. So church attendance, it's lower than it is here. Here as in Utah. I think it's not uncommon for attendance to be around like 60 to 80 and the wards. I never served in any branches, but when you go serve out in branches, it's more, 10 to 20, if that. And so that's a whole different experience, which I didn't really have on my mission, but which does have a pretty big presence in the mission. But the wards are a fairly good size. It's, like I said, not as big, but you do have kind of a ward feel, and so that is nice. I think I would have for sure focused on church attendance, I think more than I did, especially at the beginning of my mission, because especially with getting them to baptism and then keeping them active after baptism, I think church attendance, along with just the basic things like reading your scriptures and saying your prayers, I think is vitally important. And I think that I thought, and it is, and testimony is a huge deal, and they have to have a testimony of the gospel before they get baptized. But if they aren't even willing to get out of bed or make it to church on Sunday consistently, then that's something I think that they need to do, and that will help them in large part progress towards baptism. In terms of missionary work in general, on my mission, there was a pretty big shift from tracting and to working with the members. And towards the ending of my mission is when the Feed My Sheep program came out and all of that, and the big push from the church about that. And so we were really encouraged to stop tracting altogether. Almost, I mean, they wanted you to fill your time with missionary activities, and sometimes that was really the only thing you could do. But just kind of the polish shift at the beginning of my mission, you didn't have to, but you would report on how many days you did like 2 hours of tracting or street contacting. And so that was a push that was going on in the mission when I got there, was to really do that, versus at the ending of my mission, it was discouraged. And it was, if you ended up having to do that, then you probably should try and plan a little bit better, try and make a little bit more appointments with members, and do more of that kind of missionary work. So that was an interesting shift to see the mission go through. It's just really important to understand that people have real trials and things that they have to get through, whether it's addiction, whether it's testimony. Like sometimes people don't get answers to prayer straight away. And I think that's something that as missionaries, especially at the beginning of their mission, they might not fully understand, is that you don't just want to get people baptized, but you want them to really gain an understanding and a love for the gospel. And sometimes there are things that prevent that from happening, whether, like I said, whether it's addiction, whether it's family issues, whether it's, testimony issues or things that happen to them growing up or whatever it is. There are legitimate things that people have to work through and have to get through before, even if they have a desire to make it there, they have to work through those things. And sometimes that doesn't happen on the timeline that you'd like it to or that you'd hope it would. But it's something that they have to go through with the Lord and with themselves and to get through. And you don't want to rush that process, because if you rush them through that, then in the end, it's not going to be a positive experience for them or for you. And so you want them to turn to the Lord and to have them make goals with the Lord and to try and be compassionate and understanding of what they're going through. So I served from August of 2011 to August of 2013. And I started my mission in the Mount Druitt mission, or the Mount Druitt area. And I spent the first 5 transfers of my mission there. So it comes out to 7 months almost. And after that, I served in an area a little bit closer to Sydney. It was actually so there's a YSA ward that meets in downtown Sydney, and a lot of students go to that. I was in the area that was the family ward that covered the city and kind of the outskirts of the city. And I was there for 4 transfers. And so that was a unique area because you covered in the area, there were almost like 1.5 million people that lived in the area boundaries. So it was crazy. And you got every type of people that live there. After that, I went to an area that's, again, kind of on more suburbs of Sydney. And I spent 2 transfers there. And then after that, I went and I was in a different zone than my first area, but I lived with the missionaries that served in my first area because we shared a boundary. And so it was kind of interesting because we had one companionship from this zone and one companionship from this zone, and we lived together. But that was really cool because I got to live with the missionaries that had served in my first area, and that would meet up for lunch with some of the people I worked with. And so, we would go to lunch sometimes with them and I would get to reconnect. And so that was a really nice way to end my mission. I think I spent 5.5 transfers in that area. My second area was called Summerhill. My third area was called Mortdale. And my last area was Penrith, or the Missionary ward. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but just to reiterate how generous they are. Missionaries, right, aren't supposed to take money from members and stuff, but some members would just, if they would see you on the street, they would roll down the window and try and give you money. And if you didn't accept it, they would just drop it outside their window and drive away. So, you pick it up and take it, right? You don't want to just leave like a $20 bill sitting on the street, but just, they're so generous and they want to do whatever they can to help the missionaries, especially when it comes to finances. I know in my first area, we would leave and then come back, and some members had broken into our house and stocked our pantry full of groceries and stuff, and just unbelievably generous and helpful, and just that. And that's not to encourage breaking into missionaries' apartments or throwing money at them out of car doors, but it just blew me away how generous and willing to, even when they don't have a lot. I remember this Tongan man, he was in the bishopric in my first ward, but this broke my heart a little bit. But I had just found out I was getting transferred, and so I went to go say goodbye to him. And he opened his fridge, and all he had in his fridge was one store-bought chicken. So you could, like you go to the store and you can buy like the pre-cooked chickens and stuff. And that was like the only thing I saw in his fridge. And he has like 6 kids or 7 kids. And he brought it out and just like put it down in front of us. And I was like, well, this is your, like, I wish I would have had more time, but this is all we have. And like fed it to me and my companion. And like, just literally giving until they have nothing left and going without themselves just to bless and serve the elders and sisters. It's just phenomenal. Rugby is really big in Australia. I'm surprised it hasn't been brought up before, but when I got there, it was the Rugby World Cup. Right when I jumped into my mission, the finals and semifinals and stuff were going on. So rugby's huge there. A lot of Polynesians play it. You'll walk out and you'll see them playing it out in their front yard. In general, I don't want to, like, this might sound like a bad thing, but sometimes Polynesians can be like prideful. But again, like, that's not like a super negative thing. They're just very like proud of, like, they're very proud of their kids when their kids accomplish something, or they're very proud of like their culture when their culture accomplished, or like when someone beats somebody in the World Cup, then it's just like they're super excited and pumped and enthusiastic about it. And I mean, that can carry over to like some hard things when you're trying to work with somebody and bring them back to church. Like, they can be prideful and not really want to come back either. But for a lot of reasons, it's a characteristic and trait that I think is very interesting, especially to that and applicable to that culture. And they make it good and they make it fit, and it's I think overall a positive thing. They all seem like they have the most amazing voices in the world. Music just comes super naturally, and harmonies just come super naturally. And I had so now I don't think that they're allowed, but for most of my mission, like, you're allowed to have a guitar or pretty much any instrument, as long as you didn't play like worldly songs or anything like that. But I had a companion who just like picked up my guitar, and he had learned like a few chords and stuff here and there, but he would just like, okay, this is kind of a funny story, but he would snore really loud, like really, really loud. And so he would serenade us, like, so he would like sing us to sleep. So we would all fall asleep before he fell asleep, so that generally we wouldn't wake up to his like snoring or anything. But so he would like serenade us to sleep, and he like learned the guitar from it, and would just hymns or whatever, he could just pick them out on the guitar and figure them out of having like very little experience, and he just like learned how to play it and would learn songs and sing, and it's wonderful. And that's just, I feel like, built into their culture. It's just singing and music, and it's just a really fun and interesting part of the culture. So you have taro, which is kind of like, it's very starchy. It's kind of like a potato in a general sense. It tastes kind of bland, but most of the real like Polynesians will eat it with almost every meal, and so you kind of grow to like it. And I really grew to like it. I love it. Sometimes you'll have cassava, which is kind of the same type thing. With almost every meal, they'll have some sort of meat. Usually it's like chicken or pork. Beef isn't as big there. Lamb is bigger for like Australians than it is for Polynesians. But and then they'll also have sometimes like chop suey. They'll have other things called like loaves, which is taro leaf wrapped up in coconut oil or coconut milk, and so, like, Tongans will put meat in it as well. Usually they'll put like lamb in it, and so it's really good. Tongans have this drink called otai, which is very, very good. It's kind of a fruit drink where they'll put juice and maybe sometimes, I mean, this is like Australian Polynesians, but they'll put like some sort of soda in it, so it kind of gives it a little bit more of a kick. And then they'll put like just fruit in it, so they'll either carve out a watermelon, so there's like a ton of watermelon chunks in it. Sometimes if they're making it fast, they'll just kind of have those like variety fruit cans that they'll just like open up and dump in it. So you're just kind of like drinking this like very fruity drink it's really filling but really good. It's not really a smoothie because the fruit isn't like blended up, but it's just kind of whole and chunky, and it's really good. Other drinks you'll have, they call it like cocoa, but but it's very bitter, and they'll grind up like kind of a cocoa root. I don't know what it's called, but they'll grind it up, mash it up, and then put it in boiling water and stir it and put sugar in it. And it's very, very bitter. And you can make it sweet if you add enough sugar and cream and stuff to it. But it's really good. My trainer kind of pulled unless you're like straight from the islands, you usually don't drink like there's kind of facing to the bottom, but little chunks of the root that was ground up. And most of the time they'll filter it out, but the first time I had it, they didn't. And my trainer didn't tell me not to drink it. So I was like trying to drink that and eat it. And I was like about to throw up the first time, and he was just laughing at me. Another thing that a lot of Australians drink is called Milo. I know they have it in a lot of other countries, but it's kind of a hot chocolatey-ish drink. But the biggest thing is how much food you eat there, especially at Polynesian's house. They'll just keep putting food on your plate, and you're expected to eat it. I mean, most of them are understanding, but I was on exchanges with somebody, and he just walked out of the house and just like walked down the street a little bit and just threw up. I had another companion. We had 2 dinners in one night that just a scheduling conflict happened, and both got scheduled, and so we went to both, and we had a late lunch that day. And so he sat down at the second dinner and started eating and just excused himself and went out back and just like made himself throw up so that he could come back and keep eating the food. And you just like some of the first things I learned to say in Samoan and Tongan were "thank you, I'm full." And it's just like what you learn, and but you have to eat, and you have to put it down, and it's fun, but it can also be kind of painful, especially when you're like on a bike area and you realize that you have a 20-minute bike ride after the meal. And other than that, though, I had the opportunity to eat a lot of other different kinds of food than just Polynesian food. I had a Korean companion who would make Korean food and take me to Korean barbecue places. I had a Chinese companion that would take me to restaurants where they didn't speak any English there. They just spoke Chinese, and so I had no idea what was going on the entire time, but he would order for us. And then I had Chinese members that would cook very authentic Chinese food. Not, it's not super sweet like it is here, and so that was really interesting to get a chance to eat all these different varieties of food. Like one time we tracked it into this Lebanese guy who was just eating, he had like a leg of lamb, like raw lamb, and he would cut out a slice and dip it in salt and then eat it. And so he said that we could come in, but we would have to eat with him. And so that was a very interesting experience, just eating raw lamb dipped in salt. So just a lot of, I don't know, I was maybe more adventurous than some people are, less adventurous than others are, but you kind of have to be ready to experience and be ready and be willing to put yourself out there in a lot of ways. Insects are large in Australia. One time we started our car, and out from the vent came this massive, like literally probably about this big. And like, I want to say I was like super manly, but both my companion and I both like freaked out and like opened the door and like jumped out of the car, and then spent like 10 minutes trying to figure out how we're going to try and get this huge spider out of our car. But just in general, spiders and insects are super common. One time we spent like 10 minutes watching this big wasp had taken down a giant spider and was like trying to get it through like this vent or this like rain gutter thing. And so it's just like kind of bigger than we're used to here. I feel like maybe in the South you're more used to like big bugs and stuff, but yeah. And then other than that, kangaroos, you'd see kangaroos around in some of my areas. I feel like it's comparable to deer are maybe here in more rural areas. You'll see deer around. It's not an uncommon thing, but it's not like you see them, every day. And so you see kangaroos hopping around. That's pretty fun. So the spider is probably, I don't know, this big, and it wasn't poisonous. But it's still scary. Like you still have that gut reaction that you want to move. There's like the most kind of talked about spider there is called the funnel web, and there's been like stores where it's fitting through people's like shoes and boots and stuff, and it kind of likes to hide out in your shoes. So if you leave your shoes by the door, then like sometimes they'll crawl into your shoes. And it never happened to me or anybody I knew, but that's like what some Australians were warned missionaries about, especially more out in the outback areas. And so that might be something you want to be wary about if you're serving out there. Is just to kind of check your shoes before you put them on, because it's pretty poisonous, and if you don't get medical help, it can be deadly. But the other thing in Australia is, especially in the outback, are flies. Just tons of flies. I know my brother served in Perth and he was in more outback areas, but you just like look over to your companion, and it's like this in areas in Sydney as well, but you just look over on your companion and their back would be like black with flies. And so it's just a little bit different than it is here in a lot of places. So vast majority come from Samoa and Tonga. And a lot of them come through New Zealand to Australia because it's easier to get a visa and stuff to New Zealand. And a lot of them are born in Australia, and their parents that come over. There are a lot of pockets where most of the area is Polynesian, but they do integrate into society really well. There's even so much as Tongan wards and Samoan wards in Australia. And so my first area, actually the year before, they just dissolved both the language programs there. And so it was kind of a unique experience watching members transition between being in their individual language program to an English language program. And it shook some people's testimonies because they didn't know English very well. So that was kind of an opportunity to work with people and reactivate them a little bit. For work, they do just what Australians do. Food, they have their food that they fried chicken is probably number one on the list for a lot of, especially in my first area. When I was going out there, my mission president said that the alphabet wasn't ABC, it was ABKFC. So KFC was a daily meal. Other than that, they eat a lot of taro, chop suey, and pork, and just really heavy foods. And they feed you a lot. That's not some myth that you hear about. They feed you a lot, and you gain a lot of weight no matter what. But they're the most generous people I think I came across on my mission. They were always willing to help the elders or sisters out, and they were just good, down-to-earth people. I remember once, this is towards the ending of my mission, but I was sitting at a Samoan companion, and we were with a family that, the grandparents didn't speak any English, and we went over. They're our next door neighbors, so we would go if we didn't have dinner or whatever. We would usually pop over there and they'd feed us, but we would always ask them what we could do to help them. And one time, the elderly grandma just kind of talked for like 3 or 4 minutes straight. I didn't have much idea of what she was saying, so my companion had to tell me after, but she kind of just chastised us for not allowing them to serve us more, and for kind of just asking too often what we could do for them versus allowing them to serve us. And so that was kind of a unique perspective to get at the ending of my mission, was that I think that's one of the cultures that I saw most, just wanted to serve and wanted to help the missionaries spread the gospel. So they're in most major cities, in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. A lot of them are more working class. They get out there and they really put their shoulder to the wheel, and that's a generalization. I mean, I met a lot of very business savvy Polynesians throughout my mission, but a lot of them were very forklift drivers or construction workers, and I think it kind of gave them more of a sense of accomplishment than the business world did, just because of that's what their culture was, very working with your hands and that kind of thing. So just in general about the culture of Australia, is I was very surprised about how many different types of cultures there were. In every apartment I was in, there you could find a Book of Mormon in almost any language. You had, especially in some areas, you had a lot of Polynesian languages. You had Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Thai. You had just almost every South Pacific and Asian language there was, just in Book of Mormons sitting in your apartment that you would usually have an opportunity to hand out. And so that really surprised me, is just how diverse and how much of a melting pot Australia is. So it's a very, you have left and right wing here, and overall it's much more to the left over in Australia. And I don't know if you would say like socialist or whatever, but the government is a lot more involved. And for example, like we had the American Healthcare Act passed, but there it's kind of just been ingrained in their culture that if you're an Australian citizen, then you get like free healthcare. And so I had Australian companions that would just go up and like they had their card, and they just give it to the doctor and not pay anything for a medical visit. And that has like pros and cons, and you have like longer waits sometimes to have surgery and all this. You have all this debate, and whether or not it's good for here, I don't know. But I had never really met an Australian that was like unhappy with how healthcare was. They all like loved it and would talk it up. Like I said, the government a lot more involved. I know missionaries would go on the dole while they were on their mission. So they would like file for unemployment. Like, this is Australian missionaries, and I think a few New Zealand missionaries would do it as well. But so they would like file for unemployment while they were on their mission, and then get like a monthly stipend from the government that would just go into like their saving account back home. And so they would go home having made like a fairly decent amount of money just from being unemployed on their mission. So there's like, I don't know if you can maybe figure something like that out here in the U.S., but I think it's a lot more common for people to take advantage, and whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know, but they would for sure take advantage of the government programs a lot more than I feel like it's culturally common here in the U.S. Other benefits, I'd just say as a whole, Australians are a lot more laid back than people are in the U.S. They're not overall as big of a hurry. They're just laid back, but they're also, I would say, and this is going to sound negative when I say it, but I don't mean it to be, they're a lot more almost rude. For example, when you walk into a store here, most of the time you're greeted and asked if there's anything you can do for help, or anything they can do to help you. And there, it's not like that at all. You like walk into a store, and if you need help, then you go find somebody to help you, and they'll help you. But it's not like they're at the front door waiting for you to come in. People, like when you go knock on their door, it seems rude at first that they'll just like tell you to go away. But you start, at least for me, I stopped seeing it as rude and just started seeing it as like they don't want you, like they don't want to waste your time. They don't want to waste their time, and so they'll just kind of tell you to go away. And it seems rude, but it's just that's what they think, and that's what they tell you. And so I think it's culturally just a little bit different than we are here, where somebody comes and knocks on your door, and even if you don't really want them there, a lot of the time then you'll like find a roundabout way to tell them to go away and not be as abrasive about it. And so that's just kind of a few differences in culture. Also, kind of another thing, there's Aboriginals, like native Australians. There's a big push to try, and a lot of them are in kind of slums, and they drink a lot. And there's a pretty big push in the government to try and get them back incorporated into society, so that's kind of an issue that they're trying to deal with over there. I feel like even a little bit more than we are with Native Americans here, even though it's some of the same issues that are common to both groups of people. The school there is handled, and they have their public education system, but it's actually interesting. A lot more people send their kids to private schools, and so that's. I feel like it's kind of big here in Utah to send your kids to private or charter schools, but it's a lot bigger there. I think that in general, though, Australians are they're very positive about living there. They enjoy the benefits that they have. They don't mind paying higher taxes most of the time. I mean, you get the politics there too, but like they get more vacation time, I feel like, a lot of the time than we do here, and they get more benefits from the government than we do here. I'm not exactly sure what the minimum wage there is, but a lot of the base wages are quite a bit higher. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're working at McDonald's, you're probably making $15 an hour or at the movie theater, like $20 an hour. So it's a lot different, and the cost of living is higher, but you get more money and you can manage that more how you like. Then again, to go to the movies, it's like $18 to $20, whereas it's, you know, 8 to 11 here or whatever it is. But it's a lot of things like that are almost twice as expensive than they are here in the U.S. For elders especially, like, don't be afraid to offer people priesthood blessings, even if they don't bring it up. I think that was where a lot of my really spiritual experiences came from. One time, like, we had a pretty miraculous healing where, you know, the person, like, we went in and told us she wanted to get baptized. This is like after not working with her at all. We walked in and she told us she wanted to get baptized and then asked for a blessing. So that was just a phenomenal experience. But then other times, like, we gave investigators blessings, and during the blessing, like, the concern or issue that they hadn't brought up was just made very apparent to me. And so it's just wherever you're at, for elders, just don't be afraid to offer priesthood blessings. So you're most likely going to be fine after dark, but you don't want to, like, you don't just want to be walking around with no purpose, wandering around after dark in most places, especially in a big city. You know, that's kind of, for a lot of people, common sense. The first area I served in was one of the most kind of ghetto areas on the mission, a lot of crime. And it's funny because I don't want to get too specific here, but you have, like, the Relief Society's son might be like the local gang leader. And so it's kind of interesting because the missionaries, I think that it's like this in other places in the world too, but you kind of make friends and work with some of the people in, like, the local gangs and stuff. And so in some sense, that's kind of nice because you don't have to worry too much about them, and you kind of, they would always tell us, you know, oh, don't worry, elders, we have your back if anything happens. And there's mission stories, which I don't know if they're true or not, about the gang leaders and stuff actually having the missionaries' backs. One time we were going to go do our shopping on our P-Day, and somebody had just been, like, shot right outside the mall, and which is kind of a big deal in Australia because there's not a ton of shootings. It's a lot lower than it is in the U.S. and so it's kind of startling. It kind of opens your eyes, and you realize that you have to be careful. I mean, in terms of, like, you never just want to leave your bikes lying around. You always lock them up and lock them to something stable, because if not, then there's a good chance that they'll be stolen when you come out. I never had my bike stolen, but one of my best friends on my mission did, serving in an area right next to mine. And so you just want to make sure you lock your stuff up, make sure that you're not wandering around with no purpose after dark, and that you keep your head up and be aware of your surroundings. I'd say it's not a terrifying place, but it's a place you want to keep your head on your shoulders and not do anything too stupid. I mentioned earlier that the roads are smaller, so when you're riding your bike, like, you're supposed to ride on the road, but you want to be really careful because there's not usually a bike lane, and so you want to be really extra wary of the cars and make sure that you don't get hit. I never really had too many close calls. So I just wanted to share one thought about, like, relationships with your companions and with other people in general, but especially with your companions. Like, you're going to be spending all day with these people, so just understand that a lot of them will come from different cultures, different families, different thoughts of what a mission is, and so just understand that you're going to have shortcomings and they're going to have shortcomings, and to be patient and work with them with those. I know, for example, for myself, I have a twin brother, and so I grew to be used to spending a lot of time with somebody and having silences, because we were with each other a lot and we weren't talking all the time, and there's a lot of times when it was just quiet between us and we were both comfortable with that. But then I had a companion that was really uncomfortable with that, and it took a few weeks. He thought I was upset with him because I didn't talk to him all the time, which is, I can totally understand why he thought that, but it caused a lot of contention for a few weeks. And so just to try and work through those things and know that it's not your right or their right. you both need to compromise and to figure out if there's any contention or conflict, what's causing it, and not try and take the high road or anything like that. Just understand that there's just differences in culture that can cause that. So Sydney is actually, it's not super extreme. It's a lot like Southern California. I grew up in Southern California, and that's the most I can liken it to. And you get rain, and so when you're on your bike in the rain, I think that's the most extreme I got, just showing up on a door like with water in your shoes and just drenched. But that didn't happen all the time. I know in a lot of missions that's like a daily experience, but that didn't happen a lot of the time. Weather's pretty mild, so. I think a skill that every missionary learns how to do is how to connect with people, probably more so than they did before their mission, and how to talk to people and get to know people. Other random skills, how to put down a lot of food, like I talked about a little bit earlier. Eat a lot of food. It is a skill, and there is a technique to it, I feel like. So you don't want to starve yourself before you go in, because then your stomach will shrink up and stuff, and so you'll eat a lot at the beginning, but then you'll start getting full faster. And there's a thing called like the Samoan sway. I don't know if you've heard about it, but like you sit in your chair and like kind of sway back and forth like that to get the food moving around, just to pace yourself as well. Like not to eat everything all at once. I don't know. It's just, I think pace and movement and preparation are the most vital skills to being able to put down a lot of food. Another skill, I don't know, I spent a lot of time on a bike, so I mountain biked a lot as a teenager, but being able to transfer that into riding on the roads and to being wary of cars. I think just to be compassionate, I think, is one of the biggest ones, to understand that people have their trials and that are different from your trials, and that might be hard to understand, but it's something that you need to understand and be willing to be charitable and loving towards them. I think I shared earlier about that raw lamb. I think that was probably the biggest, like, the thing I had to like get through my mind most. Another thing is a Tongan family was eating like sea anemone, and they warned me not to eat it, that a lot of people didn't like it, but I was like, oh, I'll try it. And I think that was the most disgusting food I ate. And sorry, I don't mean that to be offensive, but I think it's generally considered a pretty rank food, but it's kind of like if you go to the beach, like on the rocks, there'll be like sea anemones like attached to the rocks, and they're kind of this, like the way it was served was kind of like an almost soupy form, but just very not jello like, but just a really weird texture, slimy and not tasting. I don't know. It just wasn't very good. So we were walking. And he was a member of the local gang there, but he walked past us and he had like this big like cut along his arm. He's like, "Elders, my wife just stabbed me, and the cops are looking for me. So if they ask you, just don't tell them you saw me." That was just kind of a fun, like, it happened so fast, and then he walked away, and we were just like, "What just happened?" And then we walked, and there's like cop cars patrolling like up and down the street. We never got stopped. But anyway, actually the first like 6 months of my mission were really hard. We didn't have much work. There wasn't a lot going on in the area. We didn't teach a lot of lessons. We didn't have any baptisms. And it's not all about numbers or anything, but it really taught me to put my faith in the Lord, and that we would accomplish what he wanted us to accomplish as long as we worked hard and were diligent. And so it was a trial of faith, but it was also a really good growing experience. Best mission prep is just to work on developing your testimony, work on having spiritual experiences that you initiate yourself through reading the scriptures and praying, and learn what the Spirit feels like to you. A big thing in our mission, which I don't know how, like, if this is like appropriate, but people wear Dickies a lot of the time, and so they're kind of like, they look like slacks, but you press them and they look really nice. But especially if you're on a bike, like, they don't get holes in them as easily as like normal slacks do. They're a lot more durable. They don't get dirty as easily. And other than that, I would always tell people to bring like one nice suit. In our mission, you recommend is to bring 2 suits. But to bring one nice suit that you would wear to like zone conferences, and then to bring one like kind of just straight black, like tatter suit, where you can like ride your bike on it, and you can, if you need to, you can buy like another pair of pants that'll still match the jacket, and just kind of have like a suit that if you know ride your bike to district meeting, you can, and you're not worried about putting holes in it or anything. Pack light, like you gather a lot of stuff on your mission, and that stuff is going to be more important to you, especially in Sydney. Like if you need another white shirt, you can go out and buy another white shirt. Like they're all, there's things available to you. So pack light so that you can bring more home and collect stuff on your mission, but don't be a hoarder or anything like that on your mission. So I shared my first apartment with 3 Polynesians. And one of them would just teach me, like, he would teach me these words, but they're swear words and like Tongan and so on. And he didn't tell me, like, he said that they meant other things. And so anyway, so I went and said, I was like, a member asked if I had learned anything. So I told him what I had learned, and he just started like laughing his head off, and he told me what some of them meant. A lot of the funny moments were just making light of the things that happen throughout the day, whether you like get caught in a rainstorm on your bike just to have fun with it. One kind of funny one was, this is kind of like a classic missionary dog story, but we walked into the guy's yard and he had like a huge dog. I don't even know what kind it was, but it was big. And as a side note, in Australia, people keep dogs. A lot of times they'll keep them as pets and they're fun, but a lot of times they'll as well like keep them as guard dogs, where they like are mean and the people know that they're mean. And so anyway, we walked up and knocked on this guy's door, and he opens the door, and his face just kind of like goes into like kind of shock, and he's like, you don't want to be in my yard right now. Like, you guys need to leave right now. So we're like, okay. And then he just shut the door. So we just leave. And then like, as soon as we close the gates of the yard, this dog just like goes like beast mode, ferocious, and starts like barking at us and like charging the gate. That was just kind of a funny story that, blessings, the Lord, I don't know what happened, but it could have gone a lot worse than it did. And so, first of all, missions are an amazing opportunity. They provide blessings to you and to the people you work with, and will change your life and their lives forever. But missions are meant to train you and to strengthen you. One piece of advice I would give is to, on your mission, you have like your personal study and your companionship study, but I would recommend to add in 10 minutes of study throughout the day where it's just for yourself, whether that's like during breakfast time or after planning. Just if you do that every day on your mission, where you initiate studying the gospel for yourself, then that will be really easy to carry over after your mission, and to where you'll have daily scripture study then as well. Another piece of advice I give is to find 3 or 5 minutes and just do something fun every day. Not to do anything like disobedient or anything like that, but just whether it's taking a silly picture with you and your companion, or taking the moment to look at the view or anything like that, just to take a few minutes to relieve some stress from the day. And know that you're going to have a wonderful experience. At times it's going to feel like it's not going to end, and it's going to feel long, and it's going to, wonder why you came out. But if you get hung up on those moments, then you're not going to take the time that you need to appreciate how much fun you're having, and how much you're changing and growing and learning about yourself and learning about the gospel. And so I'd recommend just recording those experiences often, if not daily, and so that you can look back at all the positives as well as all the trials. Just the last thing is really work on your relationship with like your Savior and your Heavenly Father, and make that a daily thing where you want to make that relationship stronger through prayer and through your studies and through your actions throughout the day. Because at the ending of your mission, if your relationship with your Savior and with your Heavenly Father hasn't grown, then while you've done a lot of good and you've blessed a lot of people's lives, like there's still more that you could have done. And also, a final piece of advice is don't beat yourself up. If you like sleep in 5 minutes one day, don't beat yourself up over it, and don't think that gives you permission to sleep in for the rest of your mission or anything like that. Just repent and move on, and don't carry burdens with you throughout your mission. And that goes along with anything that you need to get resolved before you go on your mission. Make sure that you go with like a clean and happy heart and conscience, so that you can really move forward from there.